Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Holy Unapologetic. It is Marcus and Ace today. No special guests, just us hanging out, having a little conversation. How are you doing today, Ace, amidst the craziness?
Yeah, this has been a wild couple of weeks for sure. It feels like the last month has been like 10 years.
Yeah, yeah. January was 50 days. February has been about a day, and it's like completely different. Wonder what that is. Uh,
Every month now has like 74 days in it.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. Oh my gosh. A meme that I'm partial to is one where a guy's like taking a picture in front of the mirror. He's like, "Does anyone know if we still have rights today?" Like, that's just going to be kind of a question I keep
Oh,
thinking of over and over again. Oh goodness. But
yeah.
as a coach, though, you've had quite a lot on your plate. What's coaching
Yeah.
like these days, and coaching individuals through a time like this?
Yeah, I've been diving in really deep with people. So one of the things that is very evident is that I think a lot of us are in that like fight, flight, fawn, or freeze mode.
Hmm.
Just a lot of news coming at us, and we don't really know how to handle it. And so I've been dealing with a lot of clients lately, just to address like, is there an immediate threat, right? And it's kind of hard to know in this climate because everything's changing so fast. But
Yeah.
when I look at an immediate threat, it's like, okay, is my life in danger right now in this instant? And for most of us around the country, it's not. Most of us are at, within the next 60 seconds, we're still safe. We're still in an environment that we're not necessarily, our life isn't in imminent danger, right? And so one of the hard things is to get our mindset out of that loop that we're in of like, oh man, like the world is going to end. There's a lot of danger around me. Like there were, right when this started to really unfold, when Trump came into presidency, the first like probably 7 days, I felt like I was in that fight or flight mode. I couldn't get out of it. I didn't know where to go, where to find safety. It even felt like when I left the house, I wasn't safe. And I'm in Colorado, and you're in California, which are two fairly safe areas for transgender people to live, across the country. And yet, I would run into people, and they would ask me questions that maybe even a week earlier they would never have asked, but they feel like they have this right to know information about us that is deeply personal. And
Mm.
so that's been a really interesting thing to traverse, is trying to find safety right here in this present moment. And I've actually gone to some of my nervous system tools that I have in my toolbox so that I can get my mind and my body out of that space of consistently questioning, like, am I safe right here, right now? And so for me, it's taking a pause and really scanning the environment that I'm in. And like right now, I'm in my studio and I'm safe.
Hmm.
Nobody's going to come and get me, right? And so, can I breathe into that and really realize, okay, there is not an imminent threat as I look around? There's safety around me. I could reorient to the space and then start to slow down my breath and my nervous system so that I can actually ground and center into what is really happening right now in this present moment.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think I struggle, and I know I've talked about this on the podcast too, of if it's a negative emotion or I can't change something out of like the situation, I just want to get past it as soon as possible or move on to the next thing. But I keep kind of going back and forth between I can't take on the entire world right now, and I should actually feel some of this because it is insane. I mean, I'm just like
Yeah.
trying to make money, and working, focusing on doing kind of multiple different jobs right now, and kind of
Mhm.
piecing it together, and yet it's also kind of like it feels like the whole world is falling apart and
Mhm.
uh so to actually stop and feel those things, and I've got so many other emotions tied up with it too, because I know so much of my family voted for Trump, and it's really really hard to wrap my head around that. But I also think of how
Mhm.
many Christians must be involved in this kind of sunk cost fallacy of like, well, we can't be wrong in having voted for him the first time. And it's like I keep thinking about like the ways that the left was seen as like overly dramatic or overly sensitive before. And now it's
Mhm.
like, okay, but we've got a Nazi salute now. We've got like, what, I mean, even just the executive order about sports affecting 10 people in
Yeah.
this country of however many hundreds of millions. Um, it's, we weren't being dramatic
It,
then and we're not being dramatic now, but I can't imagine with that Christian mindset of like, we have it all figured out, being like, oh, huh, maybe and not to say that there haven't been plenty of people that regret voting for him, but I just know it's all the more kind of, or it's very heartbreaking for me and knowing a lot of
yeah,
family voted for him. Um, but at the same time, I'm at this very exciting point in my transition. I'm starting to pass more and more often. I have my paper right here to actually schedule a consultation for top surgery, which is so exciting. I just needed to get like
congrats.
facts to the right place, basically, and I can start scheduling. I sometimes feel like it happens in life. Like when it rains, it pours. Like when everything starts to fall away is when things start to come together. The storm sometimes comes to clear your path, that type of thing. So I'm really trying to hold on to, uh, when I look back on this time, I'll be like, oh, that's when things really were coming together, even though in the moment it can feel like they're absolutely falling apart. And like, what's the point of even trying? It's the end of the world, It's like season
Yeah.
finale of the United States. Like, how do we keep on keeping on? But a lot of
Yeah.
feelings there. But staying present in those feelings is
Yeah.
probably a good idea.
Well, yeah, I mean, to an extent, right? You can't sit in that space all the time and actually function as an adult. One of the things that I found super helpful for me was to create a game plan, right? For like, okay, what warning signs do I need to notice for me to actually be like, okay, I really do need to flee. I do need to move
Yeah.
to a safer area. Those types of things. And that's been super helpful for me. The other thing that's been really helpful is having a community come around me and actually scanning the news as if they were a trans person. And that does two things. One is that gets your allies to understand what it actually is like for us in this world, day to day, feeling all these
Mhm.
emotions and all these threats that are coming at us. But it also takes the pressure off for me to be watching the news and knowing what's going on. And
Oh,
so I actually
interesting.
have I have a team of 3 people throughout the country that are just kind of they're looking at the news as if they were a trans individual. And then they're giving me the information that they think may be necessary for me to be able to make the right decisions. And that's taken a huge like weight off my shoulders of constantly waking up every morning and seeing, okay, what kind of doomsday news came in today? What did Trump do overnight?
Mhm.
That's been incredibly helpful for me. So I would suggest that to any trans individual is to try to find a couple people that can actually scan the news for you and be up to date as if their life was in jeopardy or their rights were in jeopardy. That's been
Yeah.
a huge game changer for me because then I can go about my day and not have to, look at social media or go to news outlets and try to sift through all the information that's happening because it's happening so rapidly.
Yeah.
So that's been
And
incredibly
even
helpful.
Yeah, and even just looking at social media so quickly gets depressing, even though it could be the meme version of the news. But what do you think would be another next threshold of severity for you have to make some
Mm.
different decisions?
Yeah, so it's really scary right now. I mean, Guantanamo Bay and what Trump is doing there. At first it started out saying that he was going to send the worst of the worst, and now he's like sending just people who are basic immigrants that just basically came here, for freedom, and they're not really
Yeah.
criminals.
Which
And so
isn't,
that's
yeah, it's
really
not a
scary.
criminal offense, it's a civil issue. It's not a criminal
Yeah, it's a
offense. They are
civil
not
infraction.
criminals. Yeah.
No, they're just trying to find safety, right? And it's like
Yeah.
it's really hard for me to see the pins falling, almost like it did back in Germany back in the day,
Yeah,
right? And it's like they start
absolutely.
out with this big thing, and then they turn it into the smaller thing, and basically what they're doing is they're just trying to whittle down our nervous systems, and at some point we just accept it as okay, this is happening, versus
Yeah,
standing up to the fact that we're losing rights on a day-to-day basis.
or the frog in the boiling water. So many
Exactly.
parallels that you would think that we would have been freaking out about if it weren't so gradual. But a big one I've been thinking about
Mm-hmm.
lately is just how much we've been asked to report on each other. The idea of like,
Mm-hmm.
report if you think there's a trans person playing this sport, report if you think someone's undocumented, ICE going door to door. All of that
Yeah.
sounds like, oh, that's what Stalin did back in, 100 years ago. That's not what we do here in America, but report on your neighbor. And then, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the idea of like, it's an internment camp. If you take people and you put them in a place that they don't want to be, and then from there you can decide how well you treat them. I mean, we did this with Japanese Americans, and then of course infinitely worse there in
Mm-hmm.
Germany. But it's all just this gradual thing that we're now already doing to people. Is
Yeah, and it's
absolutely
becoming
insane.
commonplace. Nobody's really being like, "Oh my gosh, this is horrible." It's just like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
another thing that Trump did."
Yeah, like, oh yeah,
And
we might have
it's
rates where we work, just be ready.
yeah, and it's like, wait, hold on, like, is anybody going to stand up to the fact that at the end of the day, these rights that are being stripped away from minorities, it's going to impact everybody.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
by the time that people realize it, it's going to be too late
Yeah.
for them to make any major change.
And I think about that too with just the transness is such a problem for them because then they can't put us into our buckets of control. And the big thing that seems like the next step, whether it's Project 2025 or other just Republican ideas, is the control of women, getting women back in the homes to
Mm-hmm.
be having children of the right kind of children, which is classic Nazi playbook too.
Yeah.
So the next thing, of course, and has already been long in the works with losing Roe v. Wade and all of that, is to limit women's reproductive control over their own bodies. That's like the best way you can limit their economic opportunity, and especially from there, the way that that affects racially
Mm-hmm.
as well. Because like wealthy white women are always going to be able to get abortions if they need to, essentially, but the effects are so damaging and broad. But it's like you start there, and we already, like I was saying, we've already lost Roe v. Wade, and then that became, oh, it's a states issue, and now it's already circling back around to becoming a federal thing. And of course different states are talking about like actual capital punishments for abortion. And it's just like, I wish that like as trans people could be like, but this is terrible for women too. And of course it's they're openly homophobic as well, even though they take the T off of the government websites, as they have very quickly. This is still, these systems hate gay people as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll ultimately come down to misogyny and the patriarchy and all of these. So it's like, this is why the allyship is so
Mm-hmm.
important. And I just wish that like, even though it's so much more, I love the quote that's like, cis men treat trans women publicly the way that they like talk about cis women privately. Like their misogyny, they're just open about it with trans women, but they're, pretend to hide it with cis women. And so it's like we could be your best allies to women for a lot of different reasons. But this absolutely will just continue. Someone just was posting Handmaid's Tale, and all of these things that
Mm-hmm.
would have seemed so dramatic are now just happening, day in and day out. But I just can so imagine people that voted for him, especially twice, just being like, da, 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 da. Or people being like, in the Christian idea of like, well, the end justifies the means. Like, he's not a perfect man, but God can work through not perfect people all the time. And I just like, you just know that they're going to have a million excuses, instead of being like, oh, I voted for the wrong person, and this is now getting really serious really fast. But yeah,
Yeah.
this, it's more overt for trans people right now as a very small part of the population, but it very quickly expands to all queer people. And then from there,
Yeah.
subjugation of women and reproductive rights. And it's
Right.
all connected.
Well, and it's wild to me because a lot of people will say, well, you haven't lost any rights. And it's like, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Women are losing their rights left and right. African
Yep.
Americans are losing their rights left and right. We're losing our rights left and right. Like I could name off a whole bunch of different states in the fact that like legitimately they have lost these rights. And
Yeah.
it blows my mind how just like people just are completely unaware and they're just sideswiping the fact that things are rapidly changing.
Mm-hmm.
And to actually move it back to where it was, it's going to take years or if not decades probably to get back to where we were, just 2 months ago.
Yeah, as a rape survivor myself, there's no world in which I ever would have brought a child into this world from
Mm-hmm.
those experiences, plural. I'm grateful I was able to get up and go get plan B from a place nearby when after the fact. And so I just like, if it wasn't legal to get abortion, if I needed to get an abortion, I would have gone to any lengths, no matter
Mm-hmm.
how unsafe to make that happen because of that circumstance. So again, thankfully in California, that seems pretty far from being the case. But I just like, that is just something that at the federal level is not protected. I was seeing this video of a woman being like, we fought so hard for this. Why is everything going backwards? I have a friend that died because of not being able to get a safe abortion. And now it's like, we fought so hard for this next generation of women. What's going on? But yeah, that's already
Yeah.
just something that straight up is not available. And then, from a lighter stance, the idea that I can't get a passport with my gender on it or even an X marker. I'm lucky I do have an up-to-date password from a few years ago. And funnily enough, like that picture, I pretty much started transitioning a couple years ago and then like detransitioned. I came back. just because of like social pressure and things like that, and a lot of family stuff that
Absolutely.
was going on at the time. And so my picture for my passport actually looks a lot like me now, whereas my license photo looks like me, 8 years ago. It couldn't look more different. But so that might be when so I can still travel is the idea, but I cannot get
Yeah.
updated markers on any of that. And as I had mentioned, I'm having trouble getting my birth certificate to then be able to
Mhm.
update that. So anyway, you were going to say something back a little bit. So
Yeah. No,
this
it's
is
all good.
already on paper. Like they're throwing out the applications from trans individuals to update or get their passports with their proper identification.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. And I don't, I mean, at this point, it's almost too late, right? There's nothing that we can do.
Mm-hmm.
It's already happening. The only thing we can do is have allies stand up for us and say, hey, this is inappropriate. This is, as an American citizen, this should be a human right that we have. But
Yeah.
it would take a lot of people to stand up to our government right now and change it. So,
Yeah, yeah. And I guess just to remember that we are safe where we are, because it's like I don't want to go to any other state. I would feel even less safe traveling. But yeah, I think that's good. It's good to have a plan of like, if we actually do have to leave the country, then what does that look like? Because that's even
mhm.
hard for me to wrap my head around. But
Yeah.
to be prepared is good, because
Mhm.
this is scary. Another quote that I liked about what's going on now, especially with DEI, this person was saying, like, I want you to actually say which part of DEI you're against and actually spell it out. Which word? Is it diversity? Is it
Mm.
equity? Or is it inclusion? It can feel so overwhelming. And then I think, like, well, I just want to be distracted. And then I just don't even want to think about it or feel the heartache. But it
Yeah.
almost feels like this is like our country's comeuppance. Like we've been letting this kind of
Mhm.
stuff slide for so long. And now Trump, like with everything he does, makes it very obvious, whatever it is. Um,
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. The hard thing right now, I guess, for trans individuals is to figure out what to do, right?
mhm.
Do I change my name? Do I actually medically transition? All of those questions that 2 months ago I would have a very different answer for than I have today, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a really hard place to really feel into what's right for you in this
Yeah.
moment because I was just actually looking at all my documentation that I have, and I had everything completed before Trump came into office. But then I looked at my license and it has an X on it. And I'm like, well, fuck. I can't travel to Tennessee because if I got pulled over, I'd be in trouble, right? Like,
Yeah.
there are states right now where it's unsafe for me as a trans person to be out.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that's a really hard thing to figure out too, because you don't want your driver's license to not match your passport if you have to flee the country and you have to actually use your driver's license to get a rental car
Mhm.
somewhere, things like that. So it's been a really interesting thing to traverse with clients to figure out, what's right for them right here, right now in this moment.
Mhm.
And it's almost too late really to change anything because you kind of want things to match up in case you have to,
Yeah.
flee.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you thought about this at all on your own? Like, is
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I kind of put my transition on hold for a couple of years during the pandemic, and so now it's like I want to get going. Like I would be so
yeah,
happy if I were to able to get top surgery this year, and even my like little sheet here says that it should like happen by the end of July, which is so exciting. I thought
wow,
for my 30th birthday to have top surgery, to be then
yes,
every day after that is healing from, and time since
mm-hmm.
would be so exciting. And then I'll be a year on T at that point, so part of me is like all
Mm-hmm.
the more determined to not wait any longer. Like I waited on
Yeah,
so many things because of all of the extra kind of pressure and
yep.
transphobia and things like that. But yeah, and then with name it's complicated too. I mean, even my girlfriend and I have talked about like, well, if we get married then I can update my name that way. But then I want my name to be on my marriage license. I don't want it to be my dead name on my marriage license and then change to my full
Yeah,
chosen name
absolutely.
there. And so that for a little while had us like kind of waiting for that reason, but now it's like, so it's just hard, and then to know where to even begin. So I tried to
Mm-hmm.
ask my parents for my birth certificate. No luck there so far, but it seems like I could still send a form to Illinois to get that updated. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, to have it match up. So like you said, you've got an X, or do I then go with my California license? That seems possible. Like I was saying, that'd be a good one to update my picture for, because I even will sometimes bring like my passport instead because my license looks so different.
Yeah.
I've even got lipstick on that picture. But
Wow.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I feel like so. determined to not stop my life any longer because, heteronormativity and homophobia, transphobia has already made me wait long enough. But
Yeah.
yeah, it seems very messy from a documentation
Yeah.
perspective, to get that all sorted out. And then for what, to what end? Like, I don't really want to travel to other states at the moment, or don't have need to, but if I need to leave the country, I've got
Mhm.
at least my main passport, but it'd be good to have things matching up. So, yeah, it could be kind of
Yeah.
crippling to even just start to wonder where to begin.
Yeah.
As of right now, I can get my hormones, and even then, only like about a month at a time. And
Right.
so, yeah, taking things a day at a time.
Yeah, I'm in the same space for sure. The easiest thing to do is to find out what your state laws are, honestly. That's
Hmm.
where I start with all my clients. So, depending on your state, there are some states that, like Florida, for instance, will not allow you to change your gender on your ID or on your birth certificate, right?
Hmm.
But then there are other states like Colorado, California, where you still can change your gender marker on your birth certificate, and you can
Hmm.
also change it on your license. And so,
Hmm.
if you're in a state right now that allows it, I would say do it as soon as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Obviously, states have their own rules, and the federal has their own rules, but sometimes the federal can overtake some of the states' rules and things like that.
Mm.
So it gets really dicey. So I would say change your birth certificate if you possibly can, as soon as
Hmm.
possible. Change your government ID as soon as possible. Your social security number. I don't know if you can actually change your gender marker on that. That's been changing the last couple of weeks, so I don't know like the today where we're
Yeah, I
at
didn't
with
think that
that.
was on your social security card at least, but
Yeah, I'm not certain. I
mm.
don't remember when I changed it. I
Yeah,
think
I
I
don't think
did. I
mine,
did
because
have
I got
to
a
declare.
new copy of mine a couple years ago. So it has my dead name on it, but I don't believe there's a gender marker on
Yeah,
mine at least.
yeah, yeah. And so what I would say is whatever you can change, go ahead and go and change
Change
it. But I
now.
would
Yeah.
not send in, yeah, change it now, absolutely.
Hmm.
But I would not send a gender marker change in for passport at this point in
Yeah.
time, just because I've heard, I've heard that they're confiscating it. I've seen actual passports that have been ripped up, or they come back with the wrong gender on it intentionally.
Yeah.
So that's a really dicey thing.
Yeah.
I don't think changing your name would be a big deal on a passport because people change their names all the time, right? It's the
Sure.
gender marker that's going to trigger
Yeah.
it.
Then it just gets annoying though, because of the idea that I could potentially be changing it yet again and not too long under much happier
Yeah,
circumstances. But then it's like,
yeah,
doing all the work for one thing, and then, but I do, like I
yeah.
said, I want it to be my
The
mom.
hard
So
thing though is like, and I've thought about this for myself. I don't want to be stuck here. If shit hits the fan and I have to
yeah,
flee, I need to have a passport and be able to actually get out of the country before
right.
the doors close. And so for me, like I would suggest if you don't have a passport, go get one in your dead name. I know it might not be the
Yeah.
most ideal thing, but to actually have the ability to flee the country if you needed to, that's what I would do personally. And
Yeah.
again, you need to do what's right for you
Hmm.
in this given context. But I can't
Yeah.
imagine not having the ability to do what I need to do in 2 years.
Yeah.
Say Trump puts us all in camps, which is a crazy
Right.
thought, but crazy
Yeah.
things have been happening.
Yeah, I mean, one
So
thing I'm grateful about in learning more history from social media is they talked about one of the first places that the Nazis burned down was actually like the first, like, gender clinic, essentially. So it was like early 20th
yeah,
century. It was the first places that was providing gender affirming care, and it was this doctor that
yep,
was that had all of this research. And so I want to do more like learning about that, and
yeah,
more about his story, because that was one of the first things they went after. And the first kind of books that they were starting to burn was all about gender ideology and things like that. It's like,
yeah.
huh, why would that
Well, and they
threaten them?
they burned all the resources and records and all the information that they had done, and
Yep.
so it was like starting back over again.
Yeah, setting them back so
Wow.
far.
Yeah.
But yeah, all those patterns are just so obvious, and heartbreaking. You just think, how could this even happen again when we have access to all of this information? And I've been watching all these documentaries with my girlfriend from like World War II and things like that. And some of the ones we've been watching are all about Hitler's inner circle. And it just, the more you watch, you're just like, these are just a bunch of insecure men trying to get like a pat on the back by someone who's a little bit more powerful. And it's just looks so sad. But it's like, okay, so who are Trump's insecure men to Trump, an insecure man? And it's just like, what damage could be done to the world because like cis men can't be okay with their own feelings and their own worth and all these things. Like, if men went to therapy, yeah, it could just feel the patterns and connections are just becoming increasingly obvious. Where it was seen as like, oh, those leftist people being so dramatic, not so much anymore. Not so much.
It's the
Uh,
reality now.
yeah. So it's good to have our options open. So to folks out there, like reach out to your trans friends, see how you can be, even just being someone that they can talk to, because we're just trying to live as normal a life as we can and try to thrive during really scary times. I like your idea of having some people help with filtering kind of the news and things like that. Because I feel like the pandemic was a good example of how we really are going to try to pretend that everything's fine and to the last possible second. At the time I was in like finance and they were still having conferences, international conferences, because we invested in companies all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like down into the last weeks of like early March where they're like, okay, I guess we're not going to have a conference of 10,000 people in this country. Like it just really felt like the world was trying to hold on to like, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Whereas then you look back big picture and you're like, oh, it's not. It's super not. But when we're in it, we pretend, we are the frog in the boiling water. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's history. It may not repeat itself, but it certainly does rhyme. But what can we do?
Uh,
Try to be prepared as best we can. And I don't know, but you also can't just like be watching the news 24/7 and not just have a breakdown. Like
yeah.
I have to keep trying to take care of things and try to make money for
Yeah.
rent and like all this stuff.
Yeah.
But it also just
Exactly.
kind of feels like I also just want to lay down and not, go outside for a few weeks. And I can't afford to do that right now, but that's kind of what my nervous system feels like it wants. So take it a day at a
I
time.
hear. I hear you on that. Yeah. There's only so much we can do.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's, the big thing that can be worrying too. It's like transphobia, we're used to that to a certain extent, but for people to realize that this very quickly involves so much more than just us 1%, but just control of people in general.
Yeah.
It seems like it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better, but maybe not. Maybe we'll just be able to stop the tide and things will just get way better. And
Yeah.
but
Well, I think Trump's plan in all of this was to create chaos and divide the country, and that's happened. I mean, that's very clear. We're all living our lives in chaos and not knowing what end is up. But the way that I think we counteract this is we join forces with each other. We have each other's backs, and we just live in community. That's the way in which I think that we're going to be able to push against this and resist some of the powers that are coming down on us.
yeah, that's what I keep saying too, is just to build community and take care of people, take care of your neighbors. And yeah, so it's a good thing to, when we can get overwhelmed at the scale, especially with the access to information we have being so overwhelming, to just take care of the person next to you. Community, make
Absolutely.
art, stuff like that. Still find
Yep.
joy. Trans joy is resistance.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up. Thank you so much for talking today. Ace, anything you'd want to throw in here?
Oh man, I wish there was something wise that I had, but at this moment,
Yeah. Keep
just
calm
trying
and
to
carry on.
survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's on the back of my sweatshirt, but it said, "You've come so far, please stay." So I'd say that to those out
Mm.
there. So with that, hope everyone has a wonderful day. Keeps on keeping on. We'll talk to everyone in the next episode of Holy Unapologetic.